Hold on to your hats, keep moving through the change, riding the winds, sowing seeds across the range. Who are you? Who are we? We're the Joy Riders, talking free.
Hello, this is Joy Gilfilen, host of JoyTalk Radio, and I'm here with two people today. Irene Morgan, with the founder of the Restorative Community Coalition, who I've been working with for a couple of decades, but actively in the last year, working with people who are reentering society and dealing with civic justice issues. And then Doug Gustafson, who is the founder of Homes Now, Not Later, and he's the focus of our conversation today, simply because he is on the ground, working directly with homeless people in Whatcom County and with the justice issue of homeless people being moved around and displaced in homeless sweeps by law enforcement under, legal reasons. But Doug has started to work on this homeless issue. How long ago, Doug? When did you start this?
Homes Now was started in June of 2017. And we got our first tent encampment in January of 2019.
Oh, wow. And today, what you have, you were active. I knew you a long time ago, and you originally worked with us a bit on the Restorative Community Coalition with some of our technical support stuff. But over the last years, you have developed a real passion for helping people who are disadvantaged get their feet back underneath them and get living into community so that they can start building their foundation back up to get to work. Can you talk to us about how you got interested in this and where you started, just for a few minutes, and then we'll move into talking about the economics that we're dealing with in the community today and why those economic problems are actually putting pressure on cities, counties, and governments. They're putting pressure on nonprofits. They're putting pressure on us as civic people working in the community. And they're creating this extraordinary amount of trauma in our community because of the homeless situation, because of the COVID crisis, stirring up the pot and political, there's all this stuff that's sort of hitting together. Yeah. Just bring us into the picture as to how did you get here and what's your driving force, and then what's going on with the homeless issues specifically relative to your Swift Haven and tiny home villages issues.
Yeah, and just to cap off what I last said is that we got our first tent encampment in early 2019, and now it is 2021, and we have two full tiny home villages, Unity Village and Swift Haven. Currently, we house around 50 people total. And so I got started in this. It actually originated from when we were campaigning for Bernie Sanders. I don't like Bernie anymore, but like in 2016, I was a big believer in Bernie. And so during that process, we got we a whole bunch of people that were in the same boat got together and we started campaigning, and we made progress. We were able to sell buttons and t-shirts, and it was like you started to form a camaraderie with the other people that you were campaigning with. And then after that election was over, we were all pretty disappointed, and it just turned into, well, the mistake was trying to campaign for a candidate or push for a candidate that will do stuff for us. So why don't we start a nonprofit and do something locally, a local issue, and out of all the issues, homelessness is the most visible, or the one that's talked about the most in Bellingham. And
so in other words, if I could intercept there for a second. So what you're saying is, regardless of who the candidate was, politics, what you discovered is the politics itself was not the solution to the economic, social, and justice issues that we were facing locally. So if we set aside political names or positions, the issue is injustice locally, and it's the place where you could actually come together, make a difference, and get things done. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
yeah, and part of that is knowing how it works, right? So like you need to know. I mean, like for me, I try to study up on the policy or like what the municipal code actually says versus what it doesn't say, because sometimes people are ignorant about that. They don't know, like when they're dealing with the politics, they don't know why these people are doing what they're doing. And sometimes the people doing it are the ones that are saying, I don't like that I have to do this, but it's the process and this is how it works, and other countries have better systems, but we just have to do it this way because it's the law. And so they end up doing something that they don't even support because it's just the process. So, once I kind of figured that out, it was kind of about like, how do you work with this process? Because I'm sure that whoever's working in the government or whatever is probably by the book, but there's always a workaround. There's always a way around it. I mean, that's why people have lawyers, right? The lawyer finds a way through it. And that's why a lot of these politicians or people in political office are lawyers too, because it's very confusing to navigate for somebody that can't pay attention to that detail.
And Doug, one of the reasons that you've got some understanding of the legal process, but more importantly, business, because that's part of what I see as our method to be able to go through reconciliation in our communities, because we have to deal with commerce, we have to deal with the law, we have to deal with business models that are unjust. And you've got a background in business and
yeah, I've been a small business owner for 11 years now. And the business is not big enough for me to hire anybody. It's just the amount of money that would pay one full-time worker's salary, and that's me. And I do IT support for medical clinics remotely. Setting up a nonprofit is actually it's pretty much the same. It's the same type of paperwork. It's the same type of rules. The nice thing about a nonprofit is you don't have to pay taxes. In fact, I would say that from my experience in working in this, nonprofits actually have not that much oversight in comparison to a regular business. It's less oversight. So for example, when you fill out your yearly 990 form as a nonprofit, if you make less than $50,000, the paperwork is just one checkbox and that's it. Did you make less than 50,000? Yes. All right, your paperwork is complete. All I'm saying is that if you're a bigger nonprofit, like let's say you take in 39 million a year or something, that there still is not enough oversight of making sure that the money goes where it needs to go. And in fact, a lot of times, 80% of the time, it might be 80% of the money goes toward paid staff.
So let's have you explain the difference, for example, between the tiny nonprofit that you're actually running, because I consider it pretty tiny.
It is.
I don't know what the actual economics of running that nonprofit are, but if you can share the difference between the oversight and the issues of tiny nonprofits as different and the challenges that you face with being able to get, let's say, government grants or contracts, as different from these very large nonprofits that we have in the community, who are actually major players in this economic conflict with law and justice and homelessness and the income inequality that we're dealing with between the people who own homes and the people who have no foundation, do not own homes. Just that there's this whole huge disparity. Give us your insight and your experience so far, because I'm sure when you walked into this, you were not thinking about all these things when you started. You were just trying to do something good and do the right thing.
Yeah, and I learned a lot along. I learned a lot along the way, having to stumble and deal with it. Our nonprofit, by the way, is pretty small. We probably in the whole last year, I mean, we run 2 villages with 50 people total, and in the last year,
that's 50 tiny home structures and people that are coming in and out of there during the course of the year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We took in probably like $80,000 in the last year. That's about it.
That's a lot of, it's a lot
for
of people and not a lot of money.
Right, exactly. And so we have decided not to take government money. So we don't take government money.
You mean to operate the nonprofit itself?
No, the nonprofit itself does not take in any money at all from the government.
Right. So you're 100% volunteer.
Yeah, and also not not even like 100% volunteer. It's mostly residents volunteering in their own housing. So I wouldn't say that we actually have tons of volunteers showing up at the gate all the time. It's mostly the people that live there run the whole thing, and so that's why the costs are so low, because you basically, like, you live in your tiny home, and then kind of like in exchange, you maintain everything and make sure that you do the maintenance, you do the basic duties. We make sure that you have what you need, though. So like, even if it's something that's just a want, like, hey, you want some paint to paint your house, okay, fine, we'll get you some paint. Hey, you need a computer or a phone, okay, we'll get you a computer or a phone. But then, like, the day-to-day operations that would normally be staff is up to them. And we also have a democratic process. So when there's major decisions and we don't know which way to go on it or the other, we get everybody in a circle, we talk about it, and then we do a vote on it. And not right there in the circle, we go around to everybody separately, and it's an anonymous vote. And
so
and then
your whole model is about self-empowerment. It's about teaching people. It's not just about giving them shelter. It's about actually teaching people how to take back control and authority over their life, which is similar to what you've taught with self-empowerment services.
Yeah, and also too, each village has their own bank account, and so we also managing the money and being efficient with the resources is also part of that equation too. And then we have a vehicle for each site, and residents that have valid driver's license can use the vehicles to do what they need to do. Sometimes it's just an appointment they have to make it to. Sometimes it's to pick up stuff for the village, so that they don't have, like, propane and stuff, so they don't have to call me up every time to do every little thing. And it's just kind of like and again, like, if you're going to be going back into normal housing and stuff, you're going to have to do what you do in the community. That means managing a bank account. That means doing duties. Nobody's going to do it for you. You got to do it yourself, and with working with others, of course. And I won't say that it's perfect. We have our ups and downs as well, but it generally moves. I would just say long term, it moves in the right direction. And so the hardest part of a village actually is when you first start it. Like, when you first set up the village, and people don't know each other yet, and they don't know what the expectations are, and maybe they're used to other programs, so they might be in that frame of mind when we first start. And then over time, it just gradually improves. So for example, Swift Haven right now is doing very well, but it kind of reminds me of what Unity Village was like when it was open for 6 months. Whereas right now, Unity Village has just kept going in that direction. And now Unity Village is like almost autopilot right now.
So it's sort of like growing families, like growing whole pods of families who are disparate, and you're bringing them together and then reestablishing how to behave and how to work and how to operate.
Yeah, and they do that, through, and again, there's no master plan. We don't actually have like a formula or anything. It's just like, and in fact, sometimes when somebody will come to me and say, like, hey, I need you to deal with this issue that I'm having with so-and-so. And then I have to step back and be like, look, I think this is a minor enough issue that you guys need to work it out between each other. And like, if someone's at risk, like if it's dangerous or it's very serious, go ahead and hit me up. But I think you guys just need to work it out. And then they do, right? And so just kind of encouraging that, like, okay, guys, act independently and figure it out between each other to get the goal done. And then they do. And then after a while, I don't even have to suggest it. They just end up doing it on their own. And so I just tried to be like a mediator / facilitator. And I can tell you that the main issue we've had as an organization has not been residents. what I would call rogue volunteers or board members that don't.
Or difficulties with the system, because I don't want to get off into politics at all here. What I want to go
It's
back.
not, it's not politics. I'm saying that our model is very decentralized and
Right.
everyone's equal. So for example, I encourage a situation in which an individual resident is treated on the same level as a board member.
Excellent. Okay, so you're talking about hierarchies.
We don't have we don't have very much hierarchy in homes now, and I can tell you our board is mostly an absentee board. And that what I do mostly is I kind of like deal with the bureaucracy and do the paperwork and keep that kind of at bay, and then open the floor for them to run the show of themselves.
So economically, how has that worked for you negotiating these contracts and dealing with the city? Because that's the next level of conflict. So you're dealing with homeless residents, you're dealing with board members and volunteers in the community, and then you're dealing with the bureaucracy and the business. So talk to us about that.
So part of the reason why Homes Now is able to punch far above our weight class, like, because we are in the community, we are kind of seen on the same level as like Lydia Place or like Opportunity Council or whatever. We're a serious player in that. But we've sacrificed paid staff, so that normally 80% of your budget might go toward paid staff. So that's why we can operate 2 villages at a cost of near zero, because we don't have paid staff. Whereas, for example, if you had a village that costs $1 million a year, like the Garden View village that's going up, because you have that paid staff, imagine if you had 2 villages, $2 million a year, 3 villages, $3 million a year. But if you didn't have that, then 2 villages, 0, 3 villages, 0, 4 villages, 0, 5 villages, 0. And so the city did an RFQ, request for qualifications, and we applied to that. So did Lehigh. Lehigh is a very large organization.
So back up for a second. So what is actually, to bring our readers up to speed, because they haven't heard about this. So what we've got going on systems wise in the community is we have Homes Now, which is running 2 operations, 25 tiny homes each. And we've had a homeless crisis, a winter sheltering and homeless crisis, because the demand for helping people, both through mental health issues, but literally through winter sheltering and food and navigating this whole new economy, the city has been put in this position where they're supposed to solve these problems. And now the city has come forward from their angle and has put out this request for proposals to build what they believe is a more proper tiny home system that is less, it's more controlled by the government as opposed to controlled by the organic people who are trying to build it up from the bottom. So explain that and then talk about.
Yeah, and by the way, they did pick Lehigh and not us, even though Lehigh hasn't built a village here. So, but
hold on. Lehigh hasn't built a village here or anywhere.
No, here. They actually have 13 villages, and they have over 2,300 units of housing. So they're big business.
Around the state or around the nation?
They are local to Washington State and Oregon. So they're regional.
Okay.
And so what I was going to say is that the city, it's more of the traditional model, though. The city it feels safe with that model because it's been done a lot before, and it's been and it follows what they call best practices. It fits in their paradigms really well. But I would say it's inside the box thinking. Our model, by contrast, is not. I would say it's not usual. In fact, we were not even allowed to have resident managed staff until COVID. So when the village first set up, I had to stay down there 3 nights a week or 2 nights a week.
Because you were on the board.
The permit required a board member on site 24/7.
So in other words, that's an administrative rule that was put in place by our government system that made it difficult for you, and you were willing to go down and spend 3 nights a week just to maintain this village. Is that
to prevent it from getting shut down, because the previous president of Homes Now embezzled money, and so at that point everybody thought it would implode, and I tried to say, no, it's going to be okay, we'll get through this, it's going to be a tough couple months though, and that's what happened. It was a tough couple months, and then it got, just as we were looking like it was getting better, then COVID hit, and then we got another challenge right after that, and we survived that one too. But what I'm saying is that the way that we got resident managed being able to be done, because the city said that under no circumstances would they do that. The way that got done, and I don't know if this was the right approach, but it worked, is that we, in our permit, it said board member has to be on site. Then the governor says after COVID, everyone has to stay at home order. So we made a decision to follow the governor's orders and stay at home. And that's when we stopped going down there and staying the night all the time. And we left it. We had residents that were obviously leaders down there. And then we said, hey, like, can you guys be management staff? Because in the municipal code, it does say supervision is required, but it doesn't specify who that supervision is. So,
nice. So it's management by necessity, and
yeah,
interesting community invention.
And we didn't and it says in our permit, it said in our permit too, that if you cannot fulfill these provisions, that you will get shut down. So we had these conflicting situations with our permit and with the governor's orders and COVID protocol. And so we didn't tell the city. We just ran it and knew it would be run good. And we just didn't let the city know. They found out around 6 months later. And at that point, they said, well, we're going to decide over this weekend whether to shut you guys down or not, because it says in the permit. That was a Friday. On Monday, they said, well, I think there's a clear path forward, and they gave us everything we wanted. So what happened on Saturday? We did a series of videos. We did it quick, where every resident did an interview, except a few of them that didn't want to be on camera or whatever. That's okay. In which we did interviews with them in which they made the case that they're adults and they know how to manage their own lives and that they don't need a babysitter.
Excellent.
And then I made my own video saying that they didn't need a babysitter either. And then I pointed to Nick. Nick's one of our board members. Nick Lewis, and he runs Lummi Stepping Stones on Lummi Nation, and they house families, and it is resident managed as well. So I interviewed him in the same type of video. But I did make a legal argument, and I won't take too long on this, but it's important for like a situation in which we were able to change policy. So I made the legal argument, that the governor's orders were above the orders of the permit. Mm-hmm. And then I made another argument because one part of the permit said that we would not let any unessential staff into the site because of COVID, didn't want to spread COVID. No essential staff shall go to the site. I made the other argument that none of our staff was essential. I not even me, that none of us were essential to the smooth operations of that site.
Excellent.
And so I did follow that part of the permit and kind of made the argument that it conflicted with the other part saying that we needed board members on site, and that would cause us to rotate, which would cause more people to come in and out of the site for COVID spread. So that argument, and then I also made the case that it runs better resident managed and that it ran worse when we were managing it. And so that argument seemed to work. And so on Monday they said, okay, we're going to give you what you want. They put us on 90-day probation though. So like if something went wrong in 90 days, they pull that. But nothing went wrong in the 90 days and it turned out okay. And now that's what we have.
Can I interrupt here?
And I was done. That was, yeah.
I want to say congratulations. Thank you so much, because this is what I have been saying for decades. our policies and our laws lack common sense.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you did, was you brought common sense to it. It was a legal argument, but it's just common sense. It's what it's a natural flow. Why wouldn't you allow that? Why would you shut down 25 people from being safe and well just because the law says something?
Right. And that was, thank you for reminding me, that was the final part of the argument. I wasn't defiant about violating the permit. I said that I want to come into compliance, but that we need a more reasonable permit to come into compliance with. And then they changed the permit to be more reasonable, and we're in compliance now. And so and then the other thing along those same lines, but a different scenario, is Swift Haven. How Swift Haven got started. That was kind of an unusual situation, and that only happened a few months after we were at risk of getting shut down, that we got a second village. How did that happen?
So can you talk about either the politics of that or the economics of it? Because at each one of these villages also did require a certain amount of investment by the city into certain infrastructure things or permitting processes. So let's talk about the money part of it as well.
Yeah, and let me explain too that since we don't take government money at all, but we do ride the wave a little bit, in which if the government offers building materials for us to build 2 more, or they or infrastructure to set up the site, like the electric grid or sewer line or water, and so I think one of the reasons economically why we're able to move forward, even though we're not the preferred partner, is because we can move fast. We can move fast. So we got Swift Haven up and running, totally operational in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then the other part of it is that we're so cheap. So sure, they have to spend a couple tens of K on putting in that infrastructure, but they're not shelling out. They're dealing with one-time fixed costs, rather than yearly budget costs. And so I think that economically, that's why it doesn't require them to raise taxes. It doesn't require them to significantly alter their budgets.
It's more like capital contributions or capital, foundational work, as opposed to ongoing operations. You've been able to take the ongoing operations and the responsibility for managing the system out of the taxpayers' dole, which I mean, it actually creates a more independent and community development based cooperative system.
It's actually free for the city. And for the
once it's set up, and then
there's no expense of managing these folks who are homeless.
Right, but there's also that's the economic side. That there's also the political side, and so that part, and I'm not even talking about the legal system. I'm talking about political pressure. So what happened to get Swift Haven online was a number of factors that had nothing to do with Homes Now. So we just happened to be in the right place at the right time to take advantage of that. And so what I mean by that, and I don't mean take advantage in a bad way, but like the opportunity arose and we took it. And so what happened was that camp on City Hall, Camp 210, right? And that for a couple months, the city was negotiating with these, with BOP, Bellingham Occupied Protests, a lot of them college age people, activists, protesters, and the city during these negotiations were like, look, we need an operator. We need you to form an organization. We need someone to sign on the dotted line. And they were saying, well, we shouldn't have to sign up as an organization in order for us to sign a contract with you. And so they were going back and forth on that. And then, we just stepped up and I said, hey, we're an operator, we'll sign, and it's going to be Homes Now and not this other group, but we're going to get a village going and we can house people. And we got 25 people off that lawn. The city actually required us to take in mostly people from Camp 210, 80% from Camp 210.
So, so in that negotiation, what happened is that you were in a position to be able to manage a camp. That helped, but that didn't take the larger pressure off the entire community, but it was a step in the right direction. And then along came, because I'm realizing that we may run out of time here in the conversation, but what I hear is that then the city realized that there really was a massive homeless issue, and they've now moved to the point where they wanted more housing, and they went to the more traditional model. So now you're in this place where you're talking about another commercial enterprise coming in and building a third system. Is that right?
Yeah. And so where we came in was like, it was like political crisis mode, basically.
Right. And it was
and it was kind of like there was pressure on the local governments, like do something fast, do something quick, like you got to do something now. And
right.
so
what a dichotomy.
Yeah. And so when they felt that panic almost, that's when we're like, hey guys, we can handle this. Just let us set up a site, and
sure.
Don't worry, you know that we've got it. We have our track record. You know that we're not going to mess it up, and that was able to go forward because of that. If we had given them the same offer though during a time that was more peaceful,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been a hard no. Right, and so it was like the opportunity, and I would describe it as like the way to move forward is like, sometimes it looks like nothing's happening, and then something pops up, some situation pops up, and then it's like, oh, this is an opportunity, and then you got to jump on it. And so that's what we.
Well, and it's not, what's interesting is it's not, some people will hear what you just said and they'll say, oh, that's the opportunity to dominate other people who were looking for solutions. It wasn't. It was an opportunity to solve a problem and a crisis in the community that the entire community was dealing with. And it's like when I grew up on the farm and a storm would come.
And you were asked to do it. Do it quick. The government, I'm sorry. It's been my experience that nothing goes quickly when it's done by the powers that be.
Right.
So it's a dichotomy that they say, we need some help. Do it quick.
And they allow space, and then you have to meet the emergency need where it's at. Perfect. And then we all can grow to a new level of understanding. Yep. And now we're in a position to continue to move forward. So when you does that?
No, that's good. And also I'll say that, and also the planning department even commented that they were surprised that we were operating and running smoothly so quickly. And like they thought it would take a while, and so it was really quick. But what I was going to say is that also that what you said touches on another point. So whenever we've had to challenge the powers that be, that is their weakness, is they can't move fast. So like we might be thinking in timescales of days or hours or days, and they might be thinking in timescales of weeks or months
or years.
And so when the only way, so that's why, when I was talking earlier about that video, that was a Friday, and they had to make a decision by a Monday, and we did something too quick where it was like, okay, let's just let them have it, and that, because they would have to figure out how to react to that over a longer period of time, and it was just easier for them to let us do a resident managed approach. So it's a wild ride sometimes, but
well, and what I was going to say about growing up on the farm is that, it's really terrific on the farm, we were living like 15 miles out of town. And as long as your electricity is on and there's no storm and the roads are all plowed and everybody is safe, then people in the community can fight with each other, and they can do all of these political or administrative or legal or relationships negotiations, if you will. And people are comfortable because they're sitting in their spaces. But when the storm comes in, when the blizzard hits, when the power goes down, when people are dying or humans are at risk, all of a sudden, it's amazing what used to happen in my neighborhood. People would come out of their houses with their bulldozers, or they would come out with their road graders or their whatever, and they would drop all their swords and their personal grudges, and they would just go to work, helping each other solve the problem. And I think that's, I mean, I didn't like what happened with COVID on so many levels. There was so much of an economic crisis. Yeah. But the fact is, our community did have to come together and get over some things to solve an immediate crisis. And now we're in this bridge where we need to go to the next place.
Yeah, I agree. And
so can you talk about the difference? Because one of the original premises of what we wanted to talk about today was economics, and the difference of why, I don't know if you can do it in a few minutes, but talk about the difference between the economics of operating homes now, tiny villages, and the economics of operating these large, more best practices, legal authority, the proper kind of things according to the way we've done it for years.
Well, I would say that if you go back to the beginning and you define what economics is, it's a word that means efficiently managing the resources for life-sustaining goods or whatever. So you're managing a limited number of resources effectively so that everybody gets what they need, basically. So I would say that the systems we've been dealing with for years are actually anti-economic systems, and because they make sure that a lot more is spent on the problem, and then everybody gets their cut, and then by the end, whoever's left over doesn't get much. And so I would
equity system. It's a money management system as opposed to an economic system.
Yeah. Yes. And so with our villages, they really are run as economically, meaning we make sure everybody has what they need, and that it will last a long time, and that we have stuff for, we have showers, we have laundry, we have kitchen, we have food that's brought in. So like, we don't order it or anything. People just come to the front gate with lots of donations of food and stuff like that. So we are making the most out of what we've got, and we will get scrap wood, scrap lumber, and build what we need on site if we need shelves, or if we need awnings for the houses, or anything else really. And so we end up spending almost nothing while everybody's getting what they need. So we are efficiently managing the limited resources that we've got for the sole purpose of making sure that everybody has what they need and that it's not wasted and stuff. So that's kind of how I would describe it.
So it's community economy, actually.
Yeah, and it's self-contained, so it works on its own even without outside input. But of course, outside input makes it easier. I just say it like that. So if nobody dropped off food at the gate at all, we'd have to buy our own food and everything, and people have food stamps and stuff. So it would just be a little bit more meager, but it would be fine. But when we have donations and stuff, that just makes our job incredibly easy. In fact, we have the opposite problem where we have too much. People donate too much, and we end up with no storage space because everything's full. And we're like, what do we do with this stuff? Do we throw it away? Do we get rid of it? So we have abundance, like too much abundance, and that's our problem most of the time.
But but then you can redistribute it too.
So well, that's what we do.
Don't want to stop people from donating.
Exactly. Right, of course, and that's what we do, because we have outreach as well, outreach team that is also just volunteering. Usually, it's other residents that feel passionately about helping others that are out there, and those goods get redistributed. So we're able to actually cause a spill out effect, like we can spill out our abundance to help people that are not able to live in that village at the next level down. And so that's kind of how it works.
So you teach about the sharing economy, and you were going to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. This is so it just makes my heart sing, because what you just described is how I grew up. And I suspect that's how Joy grew up. We used what we had. And if we didn't have it, it miraculously came from a neighbor, or the next time we went to town when we needed something. And I'm not ashamed of growing up poor. I was never hungry, and I was never cold. But we certainly didn't have extra cash and to go buy the frills. And I won't get too personal, but we still, I'm chastised by some for using something that I've had for 50 years. Why don't you go buy something new? Well, I kind of like the way this works. I kind of like it, the way it fits my hand. Do I have to throw it away and go buy something new? And what I found is so many of these new gadgets don't work the way the old ones did, but they're pretty. So
yeah, and I agree. And actually, I want to touch on a point that you made just now, is that this is never discussed really in the mainstream, but planned obsolescence is probably one of the biggest biggest threats to our environment, that out of anything, much more than gas in your car, or whatever. And because if you make one thing and it lasts 50 years, or you make that same thing once every year and it breaks every year, you have 50 things produced rather than one thing produced. Right. And that all requires resources and whatever. Now, the problem, and now the problem with making things last forever, it's not a bad thing to do, but you would destroy the economics, or the anti-economic system as we have right now, because you wouldn't be able to sell enough product to pay your workers or whatever, so you have to make it crappy so that you can just keep that cash flow rolling. So we actually would have to change our whole economic system if we were to build everything to last a long time and everything like that. But it would save our environment. But but it's not talked about in terms of the environment. They only talk about the red herring, which is CO2 and methane, and they don't talk about everything else.
So in a way, what you're actually talking about is building a new social human recycling growth education system that might replace some of the extraordinary problems that we have with consumerism and capitalism that's out of bounds, that doesn't control itself. And so you're actually blazing a trail into a new economy world that would in fact help our community if we could downsize our consumption.
And maybe this is a little bit pie in the sky, but I kind of envision this is a ways off for sure, but I kind of envision a future where like there's a lot more where like a local community could produce something like maybe you could make your own cell phone that lasts a long time. Maybe it's a little bigger, maybe it's a little chunkier, but you could make it yourself, and it would last, and you wouldn't have all this corporate or all this waste. So I picture the farm like you described, but you've got an advanced workshop, or that very advanced workshop, versus what we have now. And then people would be able to produce what they need, but not have the excess that they don't need.
Well, one of the ideas that our coalition, I don't want to overtake your conversation, but Irina's had this vision of trying to help put people back to work. And one of the most profound things is being able to bring elders and people in the community who actually have wisdom and knowledge. They can come teach things and teach crafts and teach just common sense things that help us live, so that the cost of rebuilding homes and families when you've come out of prison, or you've come out of a displaced home, or you've been bucked out of society because of an accident that took out your economic base or your home,
or you got sick,
you're able to then start working together in community to rebuild the fabric of community. But we could do this with apprenticeship programs. We could do this with trauma recovery programs. We could do this by teaming up other nonprofits in the community to work in tandem with Homes Now.
And that brings up another point. So one thing that Homes Now has been criticized for the most by local government and other nonprofits is the fact that we don't have that. We don't have like that 24/7 case manager type thing, like on site or whatever. I kind of push back on that a little bit in saying that we're the housing part. We're almost like the village or the apartment complex or whatever, trying to safely make sure that it's a stable site, people get along and everything. But hey, everyone's got their own personal problems, and you're going to need to work on that. But we contract with it's not, we don't officially have contracts, but we welcome any organization, such as an organization we work with called Bridge to Services, and they actually help with like
Nice.
help with people filling out the complicated paperwork or getting their IDs and all that type of stuff. And so we contract out that service, which is a separate service than the housing part, and that we can more efficiently get people what they need. They come like once a week or once every other week, and people sit down at the table with them and they help them fill out all that stuff and
Common sense. Common sense.
And so it's just as effective or close to as effective, but it's way more efficient. And the only way I can describe what I mean, like our model isn't perfect, but I would describe it that it has an incredible bang for buck ratio. So for each dollar you put in, you get a lot out of it versus a lot of other models.
Thank you. This is very exciting, Doug. I've known what you were doing, but not to the degree. You've explained it very well, and I have great hope for our future. And it's programs like you and programs like yours and people like you who don't give up, who continue to strive to bring your ideas and dreams and goals forward. And we're becoming more populous, those of us who think out of the box and who won't take no for an answer. And I think we're the ones that are going to bring us out of this, because there's so many people that I guess are afraid to step out of that box.
Well, it's about, we've been conditioned. This is my personal opinion. It's conditioning to be perfect.
Yep.
We're supposed to be perfect. We're supposed to follow every law. We're supposed to make sure that all the right things have been followed through. And part of that is economic conditioning. A lot of that is what I call civic rankism. It's the establishment of protocol, and you can't do anything unless the person above you says it's okay.
And it feels bigger than it really is when you're not, and it's intimidating when there's like that much. It's intimidating, and then you throw a couple layers of propaganda on top, and then it gets even worse. And
then you throw the police trauma that came from our national and federal levels, and then you throw, just basic fear and COVID and restriction and holdback. And we've got humans live in the middle of all this.
Yeah, and then also people kept really busy with too many work hours and stuff. Part of the reason why I'm able to get involved in something I'm not even paid for is because since I'm a small business owner, I just have to hop on it when I get a computer call. But most of the day I have freedom of movement and stuff like that. And if more people had that, I think you get more people involved. It's like another aspect, but how much time people have too.
So I would like to do another conference call with you, another interview at some point soon down the road, to talk about the disparity in economic models. One is the very rigid top-down government-controlled villages and homeless, trying to solve the homeless problem by thinking that the homeless problem is just about building houses. And the homeless problem is actually about poverty, empowerment of people. How do we, in fact, help people become self-sustaining, which is the other side of the equation. And then there's the trauma and the mental illness problem and the healing of people. So these are actually three different issues that we tend to confuse all inside the bucket of, you've got homelessness, that must mean we must not have enough houses. Right. Well, houses that are official houses and big houses and meet the standards of those of us who like or own 2,000 square foot houses is very different than a person who has no shelter whatsoever and it's freezing cold out and they need to simply have a shelter to stay warm.
Right.
And then all the space in between. So I'd like to have a conversation about that down the road.
That sounds good.
Is there more that you want to say about anything incomplete about the conversation today, Doug?
Let me think. There was one thing, but it's minor. I forgot it. So we can pick it up next time. And
Okay.
and thank you for doing the interview. And I will just let me know when it is, and I'll hop on.
Okay, and thank you very much, Irene. Is there anything you want to say as a closing comment here?
Me? Oh,
Yeah.
I've always got something to say.
I know. That's why I asked.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said before, I have great hope for our future. I don't know that Joy said, but I founded the Restorative Community Coalition 15 years ago, and Joy joined us in 2010. So I've been doing this work a long, long time, and I have seen so many cracks in the foundations of business as we know it now. And I know that the work that you are doing and the way you have held strong to your conviction and worked with the powers that be to get things more solid for you. And I know they're still unsolid, but
It gets more solid I mean, over time, it's getting easier for us, and
Exactly.
they're working with us more and more over time. But
And
it's a process.
I so appreciate that. And so I guess if there's a message that I want to send is that if anybody out there listening to this has a dream or a goal or why don't they do this, go for it. You may not get much support in the beginning, but I have seen people stick their toe in the water, and it might be too cold, it might be too hot, but they come back more than once. And it's safer now to state things that are different. And I've been told over and over and over, Irene, why are you wasting your time? That's just the way it is. Well, it's not just the way it is anymore. It has changed. And thanks to you and people like you, it has changed. And we've seen monumental change.
Can you give us the email address for the Restorative Community Coalition so that, not the email address, the website?
It's restorativecommunity.com. And that's the site that Joy's been responsible for getting up and posting most of what's there. Thank goodness. I absolutely am not techie, and it's been a long, arduous road, but I'm so grateful. And I so appreciate all the people who have stuck to their guns and know that there's a better way to do it. And I just look for, what I'm envisioning is this planet surviving with us on it for peace on earth. That's my goal.
Yeah, and I want to thank you, Doug, for the work that you did in the beginning to help our coalition get moving on the web thing, because we were having some real difficulties back then. I mean, they were a nightmare, and I'll tell you what, you pulled us out of the drink more than once. So, Doug, what is your social media and commerce links and your URL and those kinds of things for the benefit of our population?
Well, for Homes Now, it's homesnow.org. And I'm surprised that domain name wasn't taken.
It was destiny.
Yeah, and then on our Facebook page, look up Homes Now, Not Later. Also, we have our Unity Village Facebook page, as well as each village has their own Facebook page.
Okay.
So it just look up the name. I think it's facebook.com/homesnownotlater or /Unity Village or whatever. I don't remember the exact URL, but if you type it in, it'll show up.
Homesnow.org is your main
Yeah, and that will lead to everything else. That's the
And you've got
simplest.
some reports in there that people can look at to talk about the accountability and the financial sustainability.
Yeah, we do quarterly financial reports that list everything in there and how we and we did that after the gym thing, after the embezzlement thing, and we're just above and beyond on that now, just to assuage any concerns that some people might have, and it seems to have worked. Nobody talks about that anymore, so that's
And that's a growing pain that you've worked through. That's just awesome.
And you were dealing with mental health and trauma issues at the beginning of this thing. There's a lot of mistakes that people make when you're a startup, and when you're making changes in a radical world under pressure. People make mistakes.
Yep.
And you don't know until you know, and then once you know, you can change.
Yep. But the main piece of advice I would say is, where there's a will, there's a way, even if it looks really bad.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your courage, Doug. If anyone wants to check me out, I've got a new website in development called thejoygilfilen.com. And I'm doing this JoyTalk radio platform right now to talk about the issues that are going on in our community with civics and civic education, civic leadership, civic justice. So there will be a lot more coming out from that. If you go to youtube.com, you can look up Joy Gilfilen, host of JoyTalk, and there's a 90-minute video up there which I discussed what I experienced when I watched the homeless sweep of Camp 210, how that affected me, because I've been doing a lot of research into trauma and the impact of compound trauma from civic violence. And I mean civic violence as we have these collisions between the commercial, the industrial or institutional interests, the government interests, and there's this whole economics of conflict that's going there, which is actually leading to many of the stress fractures we're experiencing as human beings living on this in this country.
Yeah,
conflict between freedom and justice and accountability. So that's joygilfilen.com and YouTube. Are you on YouTube also?
Yes, just look up Homes Now on YouTube, one word, and it'll come up with
Excellent. Thank you so much, Doug, and we'll talk to you on the other side.